All right, everyone. You made it. You made it. Ah, you made it through the penultimate part. I'm looking forward to next week because that's where we'll get into some of the more Elohim view on things. But yeah, I hope people are starting to really appreciate statements like, we need to get rid of leaven. We need to stop whitewashing. I hope people are getting a deeper insight in just truly how masterfully our King has orchestrated this plan of redemption, that he really doesn't do anything haphazardly. It's truly stunning. And we're only taking a cursory look. I mean, I could have gone many ways, but I had to make a point. No, Michael, stay to the teaching. Okay. Well, Mr. Reed, it looks like we've actually got 3 hands up. Let's go. Oh, Madonna, we haven't heard from you for a while. It's good to see you.
Hi, Michael. Hi, Curtis. Shalom.
How are you? Shabbat
to
shalom.
the both of you.
Hey, just for everybody, Madonna, before you say that, there was a few other people that put their hands up today. What we've done is we're just allowing some others to get hands in because we've gotten some feedback when people say, "Oh, I didn't get my hands up enough, and I never get a chance to ask a question." So we've done that today. So if you didn't get a chance to ask your question today, don't. It's just about allowing others to.
Yeah.
Sorry, Madonna.
Yeah, as you were, Madonna.
You didn't know that was happening, but it's just we only allow 3 questions, and so a lot of times it's just everybody. It's just about making sure that others can ask questions too. That's all. So anyway, thank you for that. Hasn't it? It's nice to see you.
Oh, to me? Are you speaking to me?
Oh,
I'm sorry. Okay. I'm just answering a question, or Michael posed a question to us. Does Yah have a spirit?
A soul.
And so a soul. Well, I'm thinking, isn't the soul and the spirit the same? And the reason why I say this, because in Genesis 1, it says, in Genesis 1:2, it says very clearly, and the spirit of Elohim was moving on the face of the waters. So is the spirit and the soul the same?
Okay. So
I'm
no, it's a fantastic question. Just from understanding the makeup of man a bit more intimately, but what it points to, it's a really deep rabbit hole. In I forget which part it was earlier in this series, we looked at Genesis 2, the creation of man, and it says that Yah formed man out of the dust of the ground, and he breathed into it the breath of life. Now, very often in scripture, you will see the same thing being spoken of 2 different ways. And very often the breath of Elohim is equated to the spirit of Elohim. And so you see, he takes clay, he breathes into it his spirit, and man becomes a living soul. It's the combination of body and spirit that the soul comes about. And so this brings up so this is why we have the spirit of Elohim inside of us, but who you are, Madonna, you are a living nephesh. You're not a body, you're a living nephesh. But Genesis is telling us that we're a 3-part being: body, soul, spirit. And the spirit comes from Elohim. It says, we know that the flesh dies and rots away, essentially. we know that upon death, the spirit goes back to Elohim, where it came from,
Yes.
but the soul goes down to Sheol. And so again, you get these three parts coming together. Now, there are verses where Yah says, I will love you with all my nephesh. There are verses that speak of Elohim speaking from his nephesh, of Elohim loving from his nephesh, which now here's the question. How does a nephesh come about? Do you see? Now, how can Elohim have a soul? The biblical pattern we've been given is spirit and body coming together. Do you now maybe think, oh, how does Messiah fit into all this? How can Elohim have a soul? Biblically, he needs a body. Oh. It's deep. It's really deep. Like think of the creator, which we cannot understand, the Father Elohim. We cannot understand him. How does he interact with his creation? How can we know him? You know, we're the proverbial ants in the ant farm trying to understand the owner of the terrarium. Like, how can an ant conceive what a human being is, right? Much in the same way, amplified many levels, how can we as human beings understand an Elohim? How can he interact? And again, the great riddle of the Tanakh, how does Elohim have a soul? When Genesis 2 is very clear how a soul comes about. I'll leave it at that.
I'll think about that one. That's very deep, as you said.
I'll get a little stranger on you, Madonna. It'll start to let you know why the messengers long to look into this and why we even see the reality of the Nephilim. They tried to discover something, to have something they were never allowed to do on their terms. The attempt to do so has put them into a state of what we call demons. They are not granted this. They did something they should not have. They long to look into something. And so there's, these effects are real when you try to take matters into your own hands, what the messengers did. And so you remember they're coming as these spirit beings. Also, too, what you're asking lets you help you understand the journey of the deity of Messiah. When you understand these things, that he did not cheat, that this is real. He did not ask us to endure anything he was not willing to as well. And the importance of our sovereignty is actually at the nephesh level, not the body level, because that's gone. It can't be. And if we're in the great test, as King Solomon said, well, then that's not happening at the spirit. So where is this test going to take place? What's going to be written on the heart of something? And the only place that can be is not in something that decays, not in the place we came from. It has to be something that's a part of the test and the nephesh. And so it's where our emotional state resides. It's where we have to overcome. It's where the covenant will be written. And so these are big questions, and we're discovering the great mysteries of all of these things as we go through this time domain test. But just so you asked a question that is very relevant to the renewed covenant because it's where it's all happening. But it also opens up, deity of Messiah, the Nephilim, what the messengers long to look into. I mean, this is all a part of this great question you asked.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
You gave me more to think about.
Yeah, I see in the comments, Curtis, people's minds are being blown with the whole Nephilim thing. And, let me give a little breadcrumb on that, because what was given to man that was not given to the angels? I've covered this in the past. Because man fell, he was given the opportunity to toil for his good. To toil. Man had to toil, woman has to toil in the raising of the children, which then points to the millennial reign, huge thing there. But it seems to be that through the fallen state and being inserted into the time domain, which a soul will be a part of the process, that allows you the ability to toil. The angelic host have not been given that. That was given to man, fallen man at that. And so why would the angels want to come into the time domain? Like, it's deep. Like, what do they really, like, what do they know? Like, they obviously understand the mechanics of it. They understand the mechanics, right? There needs to be a soul so that you can toil. But it's how they went about it.
So we can even be closer. They're longing to look in, and Scripture gives us hints of this. It goes even deeper. This will come down to the judgment seat of Messiah now. What is judged at the judgment seat? It's not our flesh. And it's not from where we came from Elohim. Something is being judged is before Messiah, who also didn't cheat. So there is a righteous judgment coming, and this all will now flow into righteous judgment. So there is something really huge here. There's a reason why we saw all the shenanigans being hinted at, and why why the demonic realm was created, because of this longing to look into on their own strength, and why they're not granted Sheol. They're not granted rest and peace, and now we have these things that are trapped in the time domain. And so because they weren't granted that which is a true nephesh granted by Elohim can rest in peace, but will stand before the judgment seat of Messiah, who did overcome the flesh. See, only that which can judge the nephesh had to overcome what the nephesh would reside in. And now this is going to take you into understanding why he had to be the set apart lamb. It's a huge question. We don't, honestly, Michael and I will go into a bit more in this in Sukkot, but it's huge what you're asking.
You say this all the time. We'll go into it in Sukkot, and it's like, man, we've got a lot of things to get through at Sukkot at this rate.
All I can tell you is the whole religious realm, including all this weirdness in the Messianic and Hebrew roots movements, they have not got a concept of this, because they're trying to fight the truth, the revelation of it through their doctrines, which they've inherited over time. And then they're trying to make it fit and twist. If you just get it out of the house, suddenly it will read very plain. Yeah. The only reason why things are hard to understand is because what's in our house. It's not because it's hard to understand. It's because we've got something making a lot of noise in here, and it's called every wind of doctrine, which we've all been swaying around like reeds in our faith journey, Ooh, what's this? What's that? And it fills us up with stuff which plugs our ears, the leaven that plugs our ears. And this is why we're laboring all of this so much, because if we don't get out of the house, how do we hear this? How do we see it? Those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. Well, it's spiritual leaven that's blocking us up. We got to get it out. Oh, so we won't even ask the questions, never mind being able to hear the answers. So anyway, that was deep.
Yeah. Slightly off topic. When you said we've been swaying around like reeds, I was like, oh, you're called Curtis Reed.
Yeah, spelt wrong. I spelled the wrong way, though.
It's spelled the righteous way, your way, right?
Correct.
With I in it. I. Sorry.
Right. Not me. Sorry. Michael and I have to laugh at ourselves, because if we don't, we'll go stir crazy ourselves. Remember, we're all in the time domain with you too, right? So we got to find a way to make it through as well. So sorry that you have to put up with our little sense of humor, but it keeps us going.
All right. We have a Brendan.
Okay.
We can hear you, bro.
Sorry, I had it mirrored from my phone to the TV. I was not prepared to go second. So bear with me one moment. Let me get set up over here. So what a great question that was. Makes me not want to answer my question because of how good that one was. So I had a Christian background is what I came from, and so I still have some leaven in this, like about Yeshua and the Spirit. So I kept hearing the renewed covenant, and it's like, okay, growing up, I was always taught like, okay, Jesus and the Spirit, you believe on Him, and you have the Spirit. Their Spirit resides in you, so on and so forth. And then it got me thinking about, was it John 14, when it says He will send us a helper in His name? In the original or the first covenant, did they have that helper with them, like the Spirit, or was that not something that was poured out until after Yeshua came? Does that make sense?
It does. And it's actually a really good question. In a different direction, but I'll start with this. People get confused. Well, if I have the Spirit of Elohim, the breath of life already in me, why do I need the Spirit? I.e., Acts chapter 2, pouring out. I've always given a little parable to help people understand. I don't know if it's helpful but the parable I've given is, like central heating boilers that have like a little pilot light. I've always likened it to, think of the breath of life as the pilot light. You are the thing, you're on, you're alive, you've been switched on, right? But when the Ruach was poured out, that pilot light, the whole gas burner went on, right? That's the analogy I give. Now, the question is then, well, was the pouring out of the Spirit unique? We see in the Tanakh, in the Torah, the prophets, that there were people that had the Spirit poured out on them. Look at Moshe. Moshe passed on some of the Spirit, right, through the laying on of hands to the 70 elders. So we see that certain people did have the Spirit. David had the Spirit. We see that the Spirit left Saul. So he must have had it initially, right? You see these things. And so I do believe, like, Yah doesn't change. Free will doesn't change. The call out to his people doesn't change. These are my personal thoughts now. So my personal thoughts. I believe that you could have always had a circumcised heart. Always. We went through today that, heart circumcision is not an Acts chapter 2 thing. And I do believe that the more circumcised your heart was, the more He could use you as a vessel through His Spirit. Now, what is unique about Acts chapter 2 is that it seemed to have been poured further afield, if that makes sense. And so that's what I do say. Like, I'm not going to say that it wasn't different after Acts chapter 2. There clearly seems to have been a shift, but the principles thereof is still the same. Like, we still had healings occurring in the Tanakh. We still had prophetic gifts of discernment. If you actually read through the Tanakh, without the leaven of the gifts of the Spirit that's given by Christianity, you can actually see a lot of the gifts of the Spirit in operation throughout the Tanakh. What does seem to be unique, though, about Acts chapter 2 is that went a bit further afield. So I don't know if that helps, but these are my personal musings on the issue. I don't know what Curtis wants to add.
Yeah, no, I'm as you know, Michael, it's similar. I would say not further afield. I'd say further internal. The residing of His Spirit becoming one with ours that did change at Shavuot. We are the temple. And this is why the Brit is saying, and why Messiah was saying, don't you know you are the temple? This is where my spirit wishes to reside, is with you as one. So the fact the Ruach's been with us the whole time from an external input and the presence of the Ruach and the guidance of the Ruach and the prophetic utterances through the prophets of the Ruach, to the whole moving of the house of Israel out of bondage and the giving of the covenant, the Torah was all included all of this. There was a special thing that was going to change that we do see recorded in the Brit, where his spirit would become one with ours. And this is why the working of the nephesh now, the circumcision of the heart, is so important. As an opportunity for us now with the one who overcame to reside in us, to help us with this process, not just with us. And so there was a distinctive thing that has occurred over the last almost 2,000 years for the purpose of the great plan of redemption, because we are heading to the judgment seat of Messiah, and the nephesh is the scoreboard. So, it's like, it's not our spirit and it's not the stuff that decays. It's what is going to come. And this is why I teach, Brendan, that what is the only thing that will be eternal, truly eternal, out of the whole plan of redemption in the time domain? It's the covenant. Because it's the thing that actually got written onto us because we had a nephesh. Oh boy, I'm about to get deep here. What if the only way to imprint on your spirit a covenant was to have a nephesh? It's the only way that this can occur if it's to be sovereign, if it's truly going to make love legitimate. Do you see what I mean? He didn't magically go, here, we're all spirits, here's the covenant. Right? He had to be able to receive something. And so you're seeing the legitimizing of love in the most incredible way. We call it life, the time domain. King Solomon called it the test. But something had to be there to interface that would imprint something that was truly able to be judged, because it's going to become eternal. The only thing coming out of the great plan of redemption is a covenant. There is nothing else. In fact, Scripture is clear. All things will be made new. All things will be renewed. All things. So what does that mean? Well, that even the covenant's got to be renewed? Do you see where Michael's called this the renewed covenant? But we can't go there. We're doing this at Sukkot. Sorry. But it's literally, it has to be renewed. It's more than just, I will renew a covenant. Oh, that's wonderful. This is eternal in its scope. Like it's everything in its scope. All of existence of Elohim and his creation is in scope with something we call the renewed covenant. We don't know how big it is because we've been taught our little religious stories, and we've lost the ability to understand the significance of what this actually is. Why? Not what. Why has he given us the renewed covenant? Why? Is it just you got nothing better to do? He's going to put us all through this for no reason?
And that's the question I want to start having a peek at next week, because I asked that question, like, we dealt with the renewed covenant in the immediate sense of fall appointed times, millennial reign. But what about, why? Why did he do it this way? Like, why does he look for something and someone he can trust? People forget, to pick up off your point, Curtis, that a soul is required to imprint on. Like, I'll get into this next week, but just because you have your spirit doesn't mean the covenant's on your heart. Because if that's the case, we wouldn't have Eve being deceived from a glorified state. We wouldn't have the adversary falling because pride was found in him, and he's not fallen. He's a spirit.
Or the third of the messengers that aren't going to fail. They're going to fail the test too. It's not there. We're going to get real deep on this. Michael and I truly chew the cut on these matters to all hours of the morning because he keeps me up and doesn't shut up. So,
It's a good thing I don't have access to that, because you would never sleep. I would have so many questions.
but what we do is we do, this is why the fireside chats, and why for us to get a chance to spend with the people that are walking. It's a remnant that are hearing this right now. It always was meant to be, and it's only ever going to be. We're having remnant discussions. Despite us, I don't know how we got here having remnant discussions, but somehow somebody's willed it. Somehow we were all able to somehow hear this enough to get here as we come to the end of the age. Praise the King. Like, seriously be thankful you're even on here, Brendan, even remotely asking these questions. And like Madonna, like, this is a gift. None of us are clever enough to have gotten here without the Ruach. Do you see what I mean? We needed the Holy Spirit to truly be one in our nephesh, to even for you to ask these questions. There's those warned about. They have a form of godliness, but they're going to deny the power of the Ruach. They're literally going to deny this, but they're going to have an outward form of godliness. But there's going to be those who don't. Look, we need his blood, and we're not bringing any righteousness before him. So what the heck is it that we are? Be thankful we're even having these discussions. None of us are worthy to have them or to most certainly teach them. And don't think Michael and I are sitting there going, look how wonderful it is we're teaching them. It is a reverent thing going, oh my goodness. Like it's sobering at times. We're hearing something. It's impossible without the Ruach. It's impossible. You're asking a question we think is impossible.
Answers part of your question. What are the dynamics of the Spirit? Because if he's truly residing in us, I mentioned this out of Paul's letters last week, that who knows the thoughts of man except the spirit of the man? Therefore, no one knows the thoughts of Elohim except the spirit of Elohim. But we have been given the spirit of Elohim, which searches even the depths of Elohim. This is why you're able to ask these questions. And that is the evidence, as Curtis was eloquently putting, that what's unique about Acts chapter 2 is that we are now the temple. Look at the shadow picture of Solomon's temple. Why did the presence of Yah vacate? You'll read about it in Ezekiel, that there was all these false idols. Syncretism had been brought in. They were worshipping Yah and false gods, and then they were worshipping Yah the same way they worship those false gods. That temple was judged, and what preceded it was the vacating of Elohim's presence. Think about it spiritually. I mean, this gets into what is actually the abomination of desolation that will lay waste the temple of Elohim. Well, if that's us, let me ask this question. Could the leaven and the whitewashing get so bad in our lives that the Spirit vacates from our hearts?
Because we fell for a great delusion. It says it's not possible with his bride, though. Why? Why for her? The delusion's so great, it could deceive the elect if that were possible. There's only one reason why it's possible. And Brendan, it's not because of your intelligence, mine or Michael's. It's not because of our teachings. It's not because of our good works. It's not because of, whatever we think we are. We are not worthy of this discussion. We must know this. We're not worthy of it. But why are you asking such a deep thing? Why aren't you just concerned with how to pronounce the name of the Father, and therefore you've made your checklist, or how many candles you lit on Shabbat, or how well you did, the Passover, or how well you the shape of the earth, the whatever calendar you want to argue and cause division over. Like, why aren't those the things distracting you? You're asking questions at the only thing that matters when this is said and done. Because nobody here needs to tell him any matter of truth. Not one. No matter how much Michael and I try, and no matter how reverent we are with chewing the cud and wanting to share with the community what he's revealing at this time, Messiah's not interested in our view and our musings. We are. Okay? No, but he might be interested that we're having them. And he might be thinking, oh, isn't that neat? The kids are having a discussion worth having. Oh, that's funny. Look at them. They're, that's their take on it. Well, they'll grow and learn in that. Like, it's a father looking at his children. Michael and I might keep each other up all night. Messiah might actually be pleased and find that amusing himself. But he's not sitting there going, okay, Curtis, just finish what you're saying to Michael. I got to write this down. He's not doing that. He may be cheering us on. You idiots are finally managing to hear something. Great. But it's not like we've put ourselves in this place where we just think we're so wonderful, and we're just not. It's his mercy. Mercy, mercy, mercy. And that allows us to just have some favor. His grace. It's just what's going on. We not raise ourselves to something that we're not. We're not to think of ourselves as something we ought not. And so and Michael does too. When we see this kind of things coming out of the community, we know this is the Ruach. We know it's the Ruach. You can't ask this question without him. You can't even be interested without the Ruach. Somebody who does not have the Ruach or is interested in it and is denying the power thereof will only wish to have a doctrinal argument with you, because it's the only thing they have. They're not interested in the answer to the question that you seek. You're seeking pearls of great price. You are longing to see something that doctrine will not allow you to see. It's there to prevent you from seeing it. And now we have a whole mode. We're on the approach to this going, get it out so we can hear and so we can see. We got a choice, or we're caught in the bramble. There's lots of bramble out there.
Yeah, so not among the thorns. Circumcise yourselves unto Yahweh. Remove the foreskin from your heart.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question in a roundabout kind of way, Brendan.
It was insightful. Yes. Thank you.
Keep going, man. Keep going, brother. Like, seriously. Let nothing stop you now. Finish this race. He's opened the doors for us to understand this beautiful plan of redemption at the heart level. And honestly, trying to convince people of things now and control and convert them and all, we don't have time for it. Just allow him to take you where he's taking you. Discern all things along the way, test all matters, including anything Michael and I say. You test these things and you see whether they be so. And you find out whether Michael and I, musing ourselves to all hours of the morning, has any merit in his truth. You test it. And once you've tested it, may you see the fruit in your own life. Because if it's the Ruach, it will be good, Brendan. It may seem bitter at first. It may seem bitter after you're receiving something so sweet, but it's literally going to bring fruit through. His truth is so beautiful, but honestly, doctrine seems like honey at first until we realize it lied and deceived us, right? So, Just keep going, man. Just keep going. Everybody, just keep going. Let's all help each other finish this race. No one's first, no one's last. We all cross together.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Brendan. Shabbat shalom to you.
Shabbat shalom, fellas.
Good question. Good question. I was feeling tired earlier today. Now I'm excited. Okay.
Well, you were discussing the renewed covenant today. If there was anything that was going to wake you and I up, it was going to be that. So we both started this morning. You should have heard our conversation this morning. Like, Michael starts off, just to warn you, I've had no sleep. And I'm going, neither have I.
Wow. Let's go to Caitlin.
Hi, Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
I was curious about the heart circumcision process. I think I can overcomplicate it in my mind. So it's, we're in a trusted discipleship environment and we're sharing the things that we're seeing in our hearts, the good, the bad, the ugly, and we're sharing them with Yah and asking him for help. And I mean, that's the process. And then we're just waiting for him and he chooses, how and when to do that. Or can we be still opening up to him and still holding on, to our leaven, and that's preventing him to be working? Or let's say we're doing all of that and still holding on to the leaven. Is that when the storms of life come in?
You basically answered. Oh, brilliant.
So you answered it.
You answered it, because look, there's only so much we can do on our own. And then we can do a little bit more with the help of others. But then comes the storm of life. Then comes the crushing. That's why the Psalm says, Yah tests the heart through affliction. Sorry, that was Isaiah or Jeremiah. There's something about affliction, crushing, squeezing, refining. It brings the dross to the surface. We lose this because we're not, smelting precious metals anymore, generally speaking, or even just normal metal. But a metal on its own can look pretty pure. You can polish it up. You can do all kinds with it. But then you put it through the refiner's fire and all this stuff comes to the surface that you couldn't see originally. And then you remove it and then it's that much purer. That's why you have, Psalms that says, refine, the word of Yah is refined in the furnace 7 times, this perfect refining that, the gold of Ophir, there was something about that gold that was better than normal gold. When we did the treasured possession series that, David speaks of, there's gold and then there's refined gold, so back to your question, because people go, okay, I'm doing my bit and I'm still a work in progress. Well, that's why things come across like storms of life, afflictions, those things we can't, that is his sovereign choice as and when to bring those about in our life. But there is our part that we can play to a degree, and it involves being in an environment that's real, that doesn't whitewash, to have those that you do truly trust, so that when those storms of life come, you can share that burden, But I guess what I'm saying is we can't do it on our own. And even when we're doing it properly in the team game, we still need affliction. And I don't know about you, but I'm not sitting here willing affliction upon myself. Generally speaking, I leave that to the Father. Our job is just to remain in repentance. I'll finish my bit with this, but when David says, test to see if there's any idolatrous way in me, it's actually a dangerous prayer. Because whether you know it or not, you're giving the Father license to send testing your way. When people come, to be anointed with oil by the eldership, we usually have a very serious talk with them saying, you do realize what you're asking. Like, where does oil come from? The oil and the healing. Sometimes it comes through crushing. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is it's a fearful thing to put yourself into the hands of the living Elohim and to fully relinquish your sovereignty to his and go, Father, into your hands I commend my life, right? I trust you, truly, because when we say that, we're giving him authority to do what's necessary. I believe he'll honor if we truly mean that. That when I look at myself and I've said things, oh, Father, show me the leaven in my life, oh, Father, I want to draw nearer, clean me up. Like, I can honestly say that there's been times the Father's looked down and said, you're giving me a bunch of empty words. I ain't going to do that. I'm not honoring that. But then there have been times where it's like, okay, son, you're ready. Here we go. Buckle in. And so in terms of now, practical, I think that it's one thing having that environment where it's biblical, it's trusted. But even in that environment, it takes a lot to be able to say a prayer or have a desire of Father, clean me up, and actually really mean it, and to fully leave it on the altar and go, I'm yours, Father. That even you can't manufacture that in a discipleship environment. That's why I said in the teaching today, a true biblical discipleship environment allows the space for it. But your sovereignty has to come into the picture.
Caitlin, I'm not sure if you've watched the Treasured Possession series by Michael, but I would recommend reviewing that. Also review the trees, the Hidden Revelation. Have you seen either one of those series? Oh, she's got to
let me
be unmuted again.
I have, but it wouldn't hurt to revisit them.
Yeah, go revisit them, because it's one of those things where, you see something or hear something, but then you go back with a different set of eyes and ears. And to really review these series, what you're actually asking is the olive tree. The way the Father wants us to think of it is the olive tree part of the journey. And this is the crushing part. And the reason for it. It's the reason for the Great Tribulation, the blessing of the Great Tribulation. It's to allow the crushing that we need. It's not him just going, I really like everyone just going through a bad time or a hard time. And so all of these things are there to bring us to a place where it helps us to overcome. I'm not sure, at least I know in my life, the overcoming in any area of my life that I've seen has come about as a result of the olive tree crushing part of the faith journey. And I think there's a reason why he allows this great tribulation right at the end, because it's the final, crushing before the judgment of the nephesh. Somebody put on here, selling our soul to the devil, this statement that's out there. And it's actually a really interesting thing. We're handing our nephesh to the adversary. There is actually a truth to the whole selling your soul to the devil sort of thing in that sense. Will we allow the crushing and the circumcision, or will we hand it to the nephesh and choose, the things of this world? And so can we sell our nephesh? Well, if we work it out, there is a little bit of truth to that glib statement, I sold my soul to the devil. There is a truth in the sense that if we don't allow this process, then in a way we have allowed the adversary in his temporary job right now and we've allowed him to shape our nephesh and not the ruach. And so crushing is a way to get the adversary out of our life. And because it gets self out of our life. Anybody who's gone through crushings in our lives, live long enough, you'll get one. You'll know that actually it's self that actually is being suppressed at that time. And then we can hear and receive his truth and his love. That's why I always think people that are going through a crushing, they're the ones you want praying for you, because they don't have self in the way of their prayers. And it's an incredible thing when those who are in a crushing pray for others. It's some of the most powerful prayers I believe there is. You know, it's and what it does for them that are in a crushing, when they pray for others, it gets their thoughts off of their own crushing. So it's kind of a beautiful picture. We share in one another's burdens, thus we share in the oil. You didn't think it was just your oil filling up your lamp. Is it possible that we're all helping each other finish? If we share in one another's burdens, we're all helping in this process to see the lamps be filled. And this is why it's a body. This is why, we are to be in discipleship, to come together, to do these things. So, just be encouraged. But I hope from the message today that you realize he changes not. There's one covenant. There's one judgment seat of Messiah that's coming. And there's one thing he's looking for. There's one thing that his blood paid for. The mercy seat sits over the ark of the covenant. It doesn't sit over the ark of the covenants and all these little ways we like to chop it all up and do all these kinds of things. It is sitting over something that he's paid for, and he's going to look for it on our nephesh. And is it really there? That's why I was grieved so much when I saw something happening on the Sabbath, violence on the Sabbath. I'm thinking, how can this be on their heart? It's not a joke. The stuff it's serious. It will be judged. He's looking for something. So it's all really serious, but it is one covenant if we don't have an identity crisis. If we know we're a scattered remnant coming back into the house of Israel, we don't have a problem with this. If we don't know that, then we've got a whole bunch of covenants to work our way through according to the various doctrines that are out there. And just because he laid down certain conditions in relationship, like Michael pointed out today, that this comes before this, doesn't suddenly mean we're making up other magical things according to our doctrines. And so we've gotten into weirdness land and all that sort of thing. It's a remnant. It always has been. So, we should take serious what Michael was sharing today, because he hasn't changed. No matter how many doctrines we bring in, and no matter how much stuff we want to bring to the party.
Mr. Reed, do you have any last words?
No, let's just keep going. We've got stuff coming down upon it. It's funny how scripture says, what we read in the Brit, think not it's strange that affliction has come upon you. They were saying it almost 2,000 years ago. Applies to us today. Lots of weirdness and darkness, coming down as Rome versus Rome, and all the leaders of the world don't appear to seem to have a reverence of Elohim or an understanding of him. So we live in this world now and we watch all this craziness unfold. But know this, nothing happens unless he allows it. And he allows it only for a time. And it exposes us. It's a part of what will righteously judge us. And remember who the adversary works for. Nothing's going down on this earth right now without the adversary. We'll talk about this in State of the Affairs. But know this, the adversary answers to our King, our bridegroom, our Elohim. Okay? The Messiah. That's who he answers to. And if we get that order right, we're going to be okay. You know, we're going to be okay. So can we all just be a community of people that help each other finish this? Can we just help each other finish this race and stop treating each other with our emotions and actually start submitting to Elohim and loving one another and let people see us by how we love one another? And we can talk, you know, we look forward to the fireside chats at Sukkot. Who looks forward to some weird and wacky at Sukkot this year and whatnot? You know, because we'll be talking about some of the stuff we touched on today. You know, we don't think it's weird and wacky at all. But sometimes when we got still some spiritual leaven in our house, it does seem like that every now and then, but it's not really. It makes total sense. And it's beautiful, more beautiful than, unfortunately, what religion was leavened to present us. So, yeah. Let's get there. Let's get there. Hey, let's actually help each other get there. And if we do that, apparently we might get some oil in our lamps.
Amen to that. Well, on that note, let's leave the community with the Hebrew blessing. Yah will bless you, and he will guard you. Yah will shine his countenance upon you, and he will be gracious to you. Yah will turn his countenance toward you and grant you shalom. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your Shabbat or the rest of your day, depending where you are on the earth. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
Shalom, everyone.